You're listening to the Houses and Spouses podcast with Ryan Hamilton. Ryan Hamilton is a real estate agent with Good Oak Real Estate and the heart behind the I Do Guru, helping people build strong foundations, both in their homes and in their marriages. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Houses and Spouses podcast with Ryan Hamilton. I am Ryan Hamilton, real estate agent with Good Oak Real Estate and wedding officiant with the I Do Guru. And very excited today to do another solo episode. We're going to do a MythBusters episode. We're going to talk about first-time home buyer myths. But before we get into that, you know how this goes. We will start with a dad joke. And I don't know if you know this, but we do have 3 dogs in my family. We have Benny, and we have Luna, and we have Cookie. But the other day, Lindsay brings home 2 more. And she's like, hey, this is Rolex and Timex. These are going to be our new watchdogs. And I can tell you that she's going to be mad that I use her in these dad jokes because that one may not sit or may not score well with her. Anyways, here we go. Have you ever thought to yourself or said to yourself or your partner or your friend or whatever, I'm going to buy a house someday, but I'm just not ready? If so, you're not alone. And odds are it's not that you're actually not ready. It's more than likely that you're just believing at least one of the first-time homebuyer myths that we're going to talk about today. And so today we're going to bust 3 big homebuyer myths. As always, we've got those 3 main ideas that we're going to talk about to leave you with something, hopefully a nugget you can use. The first one is you need a huge down payment. Okay, we'll talk about that. The second one is that you need perfect credit, another myth. And then the third one is that renting is always going to be cheaper than buying. And so we'll talk about those 3 big myths. And those 3 ideas, they've actually stopped more people from buying houses than high interest rates really ever do. Okay. So myth number 1, you need a huge down payment to buy a house. This is the big one. We'll buy when we have 20% down, right? We're not going to do anything. We're going to save up. Well, that's a great plan. And if you can do that, fantastic. That's not actually required, though, and that's not the majority of home buyers out there. 20% is an option, but it's not a rule. Many first-time buyers are going to put down 3% or 5% or sometimes 0% with first-time home buyer programs. There are FHA loans. There are conventional first-time buyer programs. There's down payment assistance programs depending on where you're buying and where you live, and income requirements and those sorts of things. Here's what people don't think about, though. While you're trying to save up to hit that magic number of 20%, which is commendable and it's amazing, it's just very difficult for a lot of people to do. But while you're waiting to save that money, prices often are going up, okay? Rates are going to change up, down, whatever. And you're still going to be paying rent every single month. So I've worked with buyers who've waited for years to save more money, and they ended up paying more money for a similar house than they would have if they had just pulled the trigger with the down payment that they had saved at the time, whether it was 3%, 5%, or whatever that is. So the real talk here is if 20% down were required for everyone to buy a house, we wouldn't have half of the homeowners that we do right now. That's just the reality of the numbers and how that works. So that's myth number 1, is you have to have a large down payment, a 20% down payment in order to get a mortgage. We're gonna nix that right now. Myth number 2, you need perfect credit. We get this a lot. Our credit isn't great, so we can't buy right now. Let me say this clearly. Perfect credit really doesn't exist, really, right? So it's, we've got some family members that are gonna say, I'm 820 and blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's great. But it's more than likely it's the unicorn, right? It's the Instagram post. You do not need an 800 credit score to get a mortgage. Many loan programs work with mid-600s to start, okay? Sometimes it's even lower. It just kind of depends, and it's going to affect certain things and rates and all that sort of thing. But your credit isn't like pass-fail, okay? Your credit is going to put you in a range, all right? And here's the big miss. A good lender can actually help you improve your credit score, sometimes pretty quickly, just by talking to you and walking you through your credit situation. Often it's as simple as like paying down this one card over here or adjusting balances a little bit to kind of make things, work out behind the scenes. It could be fixing one small reporting issue where you were late on a medical payment that you didn't know was there, and then they reported it and then you paid it, and now it's just a negative derogatory mark on your credit. I've seen people who thought they were years away from becoming homeowners talk to a lender, get things figured out, and the next thing you know, they're in a house in 90 days, and they never thought it would happen. So credit doesn't need to be perfect, but you do need to understand it. You need to understand its impact. You need to understand your own specific numbers, and you need to understand what you can do to improve if you need to in order to get pre-qualified. So myth number 3. So that was myth number 2, that you have to have a perfect credit score to get a mortgage. Myth number 3 is that renting is always going to be cheaper than buying. And sometimes you hear the flip side of this. This one feels logical. It's just cheaper to rent. And sometimes in short term, that's true because you're not putting, the down payment. You don't have your closing costs. You don't have those things. But here's the difference. Renting is going to go up over time. It's going to build you zero equity, and it gives you no long-term leverage, right? You don't have options of cashing out that equity in your home in 5, 10, 15 years, whatever that looks like. When you're buying, it locks in your housing costs. You build equity over time, and it gives you options later. Allows you to upgrade, allows you to take some money out if you need to do some renovations on your property or whatever. And listen, I'm not going to say renting is throwing money away. Okay, I'm not going to say that. But it is paying someone else's mortgage. Okay, that's just the reality of it. The real question isn't, is renting cheaper this month or this year, or how would it be cheaper for me short term? It's where do I want to be in 3 or 5 or 7 years? And will it be a better move for me to rent and get there versus own my own property and get to that point? Okay. So if you're planning to stay for a while, wherever you are, then the math changes a little bit. If you're going to be more nomadic and you're going to move around a little bit, renting could definitely be an option. But it's not always going to be cheaper in the long term for you to rent versus buy. So before we conclude this, I've got a bonus mini myth, okay? And this is the one where it's now is the worst time ever to buy. And this is a quick bonus myth. There's no way that this is a good time to buy. We hear that a ton from buyers. But here's the truth. There's always a reason not to buy, okay? Rates, prices, inventory, elections, news cycles, whatever it is. There's always going to be something that would signify that it's not the time to buy. There is no perfect market, but we tell our buyers this all the time. The best time to buy is when your life supports it, when your finances are stable enough, and that starts with getting to know what your credit is like and those kinds of things. And you understand your options, whether they are buying, renting, whatever that is. That's the best time to buy, is when you have everything, all the information and all the knowledge that you need to make the decision. Timing the market is very, very difficult, okay? Timing your life is way easier as long as you take the steps to know what's going on. So before we wrap up, I want to say this. You don't have to be ready to buy a house to start the conversation. If you're renting and just wondering, hey, are we closer than we think? Could I buy a house next year? Could I buy a house this year? Am I looking at 2 years from now? What will we need to do to clean up to be ready someday? Those are questions that you should be asking yourself if you are potentially even thinking about buying. I can connect you with a few lenders I trust, not to sell you anything, not to push you, but just to get clarity. Okay, I work with a few that are very, very good at helping potential buyers, roadmap their way to a new house. Think of it kind of like a financial checkup. No pressure, no obligation, no awkward, so when are you buying kind of follow-up. It's just numbers, it's options, and it's a realistic timeline, whether that's 3 months, 9 months, 12, whatever, next year, whatever that looks like. But you're getting ready, you're having the conversation, and you're hopefully more well-informed when you're looking to make your next housing choice on where you're going to end up. I just want to say getting ready starts with understanding your situation, not guessing about where you think you could be. So before you go, I hope you enjoyed that. We busted 3 myths and a mini myth. We busted the myth that you need a huge down payment. We busted the myth that your credit's got to be perfect. And we busted the myth that renting is always cheaper than buying. And then the mini myth of, that when people say it's never a good time, or now is not the good time, it's never going to be a good time. There's always going to be a reason not to pull the trigger on something like this. But the key really on all this is just making sure that you know your options, okay? So if you enjoyed this episode, please like it, share it with somebody, subscribe to the podcast on all 3 of our platforms. It really helps us with our reach, and it really helps me hopefully get to new audiences. We are on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcasts, we are on YouTube. And this year, my personal goal is to help 10 new families reach their real estate goals. That's people that aren't in my current database. So whether that's buying their first home, making a move, or finally getting a clear plan in place, I can't do that without your help. So sharing this podcast, leaving a review, or making an introduction, a 3-way text, or whatever, it all helps, and it matters more than you probably realize. So that's it for today. More myth busting coming soon. Even putting together Ryan's top 10 Arizona sports figures for all you sports people. This podcast is not just houses, not just spouses. It's about Arizona culture, and we're looking forward to dropping some cool newer episodes later. But thank you for listening. I am Ryan Hamilton. This is the Houses and Spouses podcast with Ryan Hamilton, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for coming.
This has been the Houses and Spouses podcast with Ryan Hamilton. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone who needs it. For real estate help or a wedding ceremony crafted with care, connect with Ryan online. See you next week.